Some client moments are bigger than one meeting. A client says they're getting divorced, and all of a sudden, the question isn't just whether the plan is solid. It's whether the firm knows how to support a moment like this in a way the client can actually feel.
Because moments like that aren't just advisor moments, they're trust tests. The client is paying attention to whether the firm brings steadiness, clarity, and some kind of structure when life gets heavy.
And that's what makes this such an important leadership conversation. On Advising Humans, we talk a lot about the human side of advice, and this is one of the clearest places where that either becomes real across the firm or it doesn't.
It really is, because divorce isn't just an advisor challenge, it's a client experience challenge. If the experience depends too much on individual instinct, then the quality of support changes from one advisor to the next, and clients feel that.
And that's really what this episode is about. What leaders should actually standardize when divorce changes the room, so the care still feels human, but it also feels dependable.
Yes, not scripted, not stiff, just more consistent where it matters most. Because when firms get this right, clients feel guided instead of left in the middle of a hard moment with no clear structure.
And that feels really important because a lot of firms probably assume this is just about having thoughtful advisors.
Thoughtful advisors matter a lot, but if the experience depends entirely on individual instinct, then the client experience becomes uneven.
Yes,
So one advisor brings steadiness and structure, another moves too fast into solutions, another avoids the human side because they don't want to overstep. And suddenly the same kind of client moment unfolds three very different ways across the same firm. And that inconsistency costs trust.
so this is really about variability, not whether the firm cares, but whether the care actually shows up consistently.
Exactly, because inconsistency is expensive in moments like this. Clients feel unsupported, important details slip, advisors reinvent prep from scratch. Follow-up looks different depending on who they met with. And then the firm is relying more on luck than on a real process. What you want is more consistency without losing the human part.
That's such a good phrase, relying on luck instead of a real process.
It's true. And divorce is a perfect example because the situation keeps moving. Emotions are high, the facts can shift, and the client may be making decisions while they're still in pure survival mode. So the firm has two jobs at once: support the client well and make it easier for advisors to show up well under pressure.
Okay, so let's make this really practical for leaders. What should a firm actually standardize?
Well, there are three things. First, standardize the core questions. Second, standardize one planning tool. Third, standardize the debrief language. That's the simplest version, and honestly, it gets you really far.
Let's unpack those. What do you mean by standardizing the core questions?
I mean, agreeing on the questions every advisor should be able to reach for when divorce becomes the real agenda. It's not a robotic script, it's a shared starting point. The right question often helps more than the right answer because it gives the client a little space, a little clarity, and a sense of control.
That makes so much sense because if you don't align on questions, everybody's just improvising.
Exactly. And some improvisation is fine. But in high emotion transitions, shared questions protect quality. They help advisors not skip the human reality, not rush to fix, and not get lost in every detail at once. That's part of what makes meetings feel steadier.
Okay, Kathleen, what about the second one shared planning tool?
Yes, pick one simple tool the whole team uses in these moments. It could be the 30, 60, 90 stabilization plan or the one-page clarity map. The point isn't which one is theoretically best. The point is that the team shares a practical structure that turns everything all at once into something manageable.
Right, because if every advisor uses a different tool, then the experience keeps changing for the client.
Yes, when the team uses the same tool, the meeting usually feels calmer. It reduces reinvention, makes prep easier, and helps clients feel like the firm has a real way of holding this kind of complexity. Clients feel supported, the process feels less chaotic, and the next step feels doable.
And the third thing was debrief language.
Yes, this one is so underrated. After a difficult meeting, firms should have shared debrief language. A really strong example is what changed? What did we clarify? What did we park? And what might we have missed? That kind of debrief creates consistency across follow up, handoffs, and second meetings.
That's so simple, but I can already hear how useful that would be.
It is, because otherwise, each advisor is carrying the meeting a little differently. One remembers the practical tasks, another remembers the emotional intensity, another forgets what got postponed. Shared debrief language helps the team hold the meeting with more clarity, which means fewer important details slip.
Okay, so those are the three things to standardize. What do leaders actually need to train?
Not just information, they need to train how advisors show up, how they pace the meeting, how they sequence decisions, and how they help clients not make reactive moves. Advisors need to learn how to open with steadiness, how to slow decisions down instead of flooding the client, and how to protect clients from fog decisions and irreversible moves made under pressure.
That feels really different from product training or technical training.
It is, because this isn't a KPI lecture and it isn't compliance. It's practical guidance for real human moments. The skill is helping the client feel less alone, less flooded, and more oriented while still moving the work forward. That's a trainable capability.
And I think some leaders might worry that standardizing this could make advisors sound scripted.
Yes, and that's where the distinction matters. You don't want robotic sameness. You want a steady standard that still feels human. Give advisors shared tools, shared framing, and shared language, while still letting each advisor sound like themselves. That's how you get repeatability without stiffness.
That's such an important distinction.
Because what you're really doing is making sure the quality of care doesn't change from one advisor to the next. You're aligning on what good support includes, what the first meeting should accomplish, how the team reduces mental load, and how the client gets helped without being overwhelmed.
Okay, so let's talk about why leaders should care beyond just doing the right thing.
Well, because there's a real business case here. When firms get this right, meetings feel steadier, prep takes less time, fewer important details slip, and clients get the same level of care no matter which advisor they sit with. That strengthens trust, retention, and referrals. A shared approach means you're not reinventing the wheel every time.
And that's not some soft benefit. It helps the team work better, and it helps the client feel the difference.
It does. This isn't extra. It's one of the clearest ways a firm can stand out. Because when firms help clients through divorce with more steadiness, fewer mistakes, and a stronger sense of being understood, people start to feel what kind of firm it really is.
And honestly, probably more resilient too, because those are the moments where the relationship is most vulnerable.
Completely. Transitions are where trust either deepens or weakens. So if a firm does this well, it isn't just serving one client well in one hard season. It's showing what kind of relationship it actually offers when life gets complicated.
So, if a leader listening wants the simplest rollout, where would you start?
I'd start really small. Train the team on the first meeting flow and the second meeting flow. Start with the first meeting when the client is flooded and needs steadiness. Then the second meeting when the client is steadier and needs help seeing trade-offs clearly. That gives advisors a simple structure they can use right away.
That feels way more doable than some giant implementation project.
Exactly. Low lift, high value. Align on the core questions. Choose one shared tool. Use shared debrief language. Train the first meeting and second meeting flow. That alone can change the client experience immediately.
And the bigger picture underneath all of that is really hopeful. It means a firm doesn't have to leave this to chance or wait for every advisor to figure it out on their own.
Yes, a firm can make this kind of client experience much more consistent. And that's really the leadership opportunity here. Not to make these conversations feel scripted, but to make sure clients get the same steadiness, clarity, and care across the team when life gets heavy.
And that really is the point, isn't it? Because in a moment like divorce, the client is already caring enough. They shouldn't also have to absorb uneven support, mixed signals, or a different level of care depending on who they happen to meet with.
Exactly. The goal is to make the experience feel steadier when the client needs that most. Less guesswork, less variation, fewer things slipping through the cracks, more clarity about what matters now, what can wait, and what the next step actually is.
And when a firm does that well, it's not just improving meetings, it's building trust in a way the client can actually feel.
And that's why this matters beyond one conversation. It shapes how clients experience the firm in one of the hardest seasons of their life. It shows whether the care lives in one advisor or whether it's strong enough to be felt across the whole team.
If this conversation made you think differently about how divorce tests the client experience, share it with another advisor or leader who cares about bringing more steadiness, clarity, and consistency to these moments.
And if your team wants a more consistent way to support clients through divorce, the Divorce Transition Playbook Suite for Advisors gives you shared language, meeting flow, and practical tools to help make these conversations steadier across the firm.
Because the moments that test trust are often the moments that show clients what kind of firm you really are.
Thanks for listening to Advising Humans.
We'll see you next time.